It is what it is. We'll start from here. Okay, so the get is, like I said, the get has a toiref and a toifus. A toiref, there's two kinds of toiref in the get. You're going to see in halacha, sometimes there's toiref and toiref, but the toiref that is written in Gemara, that is what is mandatory, is date, his name, her name, and harayat muteres l'chol adam. Because essentially that's all that the get needs. What does it need? Why do you need his name and her name? Because every shtar has to have who is the guy who's divorcing, who's the guy who's getting divorced, and the date, because you have to know at what point she became divorced, and the action, which is she's free to everyone. So that is, when you see in Gemara it says Shura Rishayna, Shura Rishayna, that refers to in those days to be able to fit everything into one line. Into one line, the date, his name, and her name, and then the last words are Chol Adam. There is other things which are also considered toiref, which are not that toiref, which is the place where the get is written. Today we only write the place where the get is written. We don't write the other places that it's mokim amida, it's called, which you're going to see in Siman Kuf Zayin, I think. I'm not sure. That the get is, this has to be the place that they're written, that's one of the things, and even the words harayat muteres l'chol adam, it's a discussion if that is a toiref, the full toiref, or the not so full toiref. Toifus is most of the other lashonos that are there, that I'm no longer interested in being married to you, and I'm freeing you and releasing you, etc., and you're free and permitted to everyone else. Now a get, that's a toifus, yeah. That is a toifus. The minhag to write a get is in Aramaic. We have the nusach that's been pretty much the same for many years. A little bit after the time of the Gemara, the exact nusach that we have today, at least the second half of it, how to write the date, etc. That there were certain changes, and there's a get which I'm going to send afterwards, which I think is the oldest existing get, and that is from the year Daled Alavim, 4,630, 31, 32, somewhere around then. So it's the year 800, in the 870s. It's a long time ago, over 1,100 years ago. It's written in Yerushalayim. But each one it says where they're from. So it says some pieces are missing. It's from the Cairo Gniza, and it's available online. Now a get has 12 lines. All of you know that from the beginning of Maseches Gitin, the first Tosfos. Obviously, when everybody learns, the first day is always exciting, so everybody knows the first Tosfos of Maseches Gitin. The get is 12 lines. Why is it get? Get is begematria 12, or because you have between Bereshit, Shmei, Vayikra, and Vayikra Bamidbar, each one has 4 lines separating them. So 4 times 3 is 12, and the Mishnah Torah is not counted for that cheshbon. That's why you write 12 lines. The way the get is divided, you'll see every get is the same. The first, what we would call the toiref is all the toiref is in the first 6 lines and in the last line, and the second to last line. Sorry, first 6 lines has to have the date, the place, his name, her name. First 6 lines, and the Chol is a line is towards the end of the get. But the first 6 lines, you got to fit all that into the first 6 lines. If you're the Seifrim which practice Gitin already practice before, they know based on the length of the names how to plan their get correctly. Now the get is written in Aramaic, like I said, but probably could write it in any other language. The halacha, it's kosher even if it's written in other languages, as long as it has all the right words. But we don't know exactly what all the right words are, so therefore we do it in Aramaic, in Lashon Aramis. It's written in Ksav Ashuris, Lachatchila, Ksav Ashuris, without tagim. That's where the ches is different in the get and the sefer Torah, the only letter which is different, and otherwise most of them look pretty much. It has to be square letters, not Rashi letters or script letters or anything of the sort. There's a machlekes if it's ma'akev or not, according to the No, if you write it in there. The minig is established, the minig is Aramis, Ksavashuris, square. Just like in the Sefer Torah, if you take in Safras, when you write, if a letter, if a blotch, if a drop of ink falls onto your cloth, you can't cut around it and make a letter out of it. Same thing is with a get. It makes the get possible. A get is not like a mezuzah. You could erase a letter if it's done wrong and rewrite it, but you can't. There's no shaila of kesidram by a get. But the minig is to try to avoid even erasing, because the shaila, someone's going to see something which is erased, they're going to think there was a ziyuf, etc. It's going to create shailas on the get. Before a get starts, you have to do research of the names, which we're going to see soon exactly why you have to do it, and the end of the get is Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael. It's in one word, one line. For the Ashkenazim, it's Akpoda, for the Sfaradim, it's Lav Dafke. And the Sfaradim Varet Muteres, the Chol Adam is usually in one line, but the Ashkenazim, it's not. Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael is always, Kedas Moshe V'Yisrael is always the last line. The Varet Muteres, for the Sfaradim גיטין, it's all in one line. By the Ashkenazi גיטין, it's usually two lines before the end. It's not, doesn't have to be in its own line. Now, let's look at the גיטין, just go through everything, because you're going to see all the simanim that you're going to be learning. They're all in here. The get starts with the day of the week, the day of the month, and the year. All that we discussed last year when we did Shira Manuchas Ksuba, how to write the dates of the week, each day of the week, each day of the month, and the years. So we're not going to repeat it now. And you write Labria Soilam, Laminyan Sha'anu Mainim Kan. Now, a get be'etzim is kosher for any, if you write any year date which is counted in this specific country and kingdom. So if there's a certain country where they count based on the local kings, then you could do based on the local kings. That's what we do, Bria Soilam, because that's in. What if we're not going to write the Bria Soilam? You would just write whatever it is, 200, 300 years since American independence, which nobody actually does it, and you wouldn't write Bria Soilam. The reason we write Bria Soilam is because we're doing the Bria Soilam.
Right, but what's the meaning of Mainim Kan?
That's the point. The meaning of Mainim Kan, you have to put we count the Bria Soilam. Today, everybody counts the same number across the world. But the reason the minyan shel Mainim Kan is because halachically you have to have a minyan which is counted in the place where you're writing the get. So you would put beforehand the date of the years, and instead of writing Bria Soilam, you write to this and this king, the minyan shel Mainim Kan. So now that we're doing the Bria Soilam, we can still continue the minyan shel Mainim Kan, which is the nusach of the get. The minyan shel Mainim Kan. What other number is there? We would think it's for a king. You think it's for what? You have to put what it is, huh? But you still have to have the minyan shel Mainim Kan. Halachically, you have to put the date according to the place, the date and the year in the place where you're writing the get. That's why the minyan shel Mainim Kan is always written there. We went through it. There's a discussion in the past. There's a discussion if you write a git in the Chedesh Year or not. The shaila if you write with one yud, with two yud. You're going to see that in Siman Kuf Chavav. Kuf Chavav has the whole discussion of the names of the dates, the names of the months, the names of the days, etc. When you're going to see the schedule, you're going to see Kuf Chavav. I split it into two. One part is going to be Chazara, and then we're going to continue weiter because it's divided the writing of the date and the year from all the other dinim of writing, all the other nuschos of a get. If you look in these gittins, Ashkenazish Gittin, so one of the first things you're going to see is a concept called me'ura. Me'ura means there's no space between the lines. Every line, except for the first line, even the first line you have it, the first line, every line has it has a nun going down, or something going down, and a lamed going up. For a get, for the Ashkenazim to be kosher, l'chatchila has to be me'ura. Sfardim not so makpid on it. So every get you have in front of you, you're going to see that every line has a lamed going up and has a nun going down. When you, or a kuf. When you get to the names, so the names could be short, the names could be very long. There's also going to be a whole discussion about if you put mokim, the place for the husband's name, the wife's name, etc. The first 6 lines, the last 6 lines, it's standard how to get the me'ura, because the same words are there. The problem becomes when you have a bunch of names which don't have a lamed. Then you have to start stretching the lines above it and shrinking the lines below it. And if you're a sefer who has experience, or if you see that you have these kinds of names, then you have to plan before how you're going to get it to be able to make sure that you have me'ura the whole. You have to be me'ura the whole way through.
Why is the me'ura so important for Ashkenaz?
It shouldn't be mezayef if you put something in between. You can add more things between the lines. So that's why it's me'ura. Okay, we'll get to the names soon. Now, the next thing we do is the names of the cities. That we are going to learn this year. The first thing is the actual name of the city. Today we don't write Gitin unless there's already an existing Kviyas Shemus in the city. There hasn't been Kviyas Shemus for many years. A few places that Rav Moshe was kaveh in certain places, and not the Grimbot was kaveh in certain places, but overall, there's no real Kviyas Mokim for new places today, unless it's like a skamas of Gdei HaMedina. There's a whole process how to do it. You see how the name of the city is written. That's how it sounds. That's how it's written. If the name of the city has more than one pronunciation in the city at the time, then you write both of them. So Chicago has, in the Gittin of Chicago, it says also Chicago, test shin, not just Chicago. And there's other places where they would have one of the chuvas of the Rebbe Marash in your white booklet. We have cities that were called by Yidden one way, by going a different way. If it's spelled as 2 words, if it's spelled as 1 word, you do that. Now, every city, you have to have simanim for the city, which is why you look, Brooklyn is easy. It's the most of the Aswal Keif Yama. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. Val Nahar East River. It's on the East River. Val Mein Naharis, Northern Naharis. You don't write Gittin in a place where there is no siman for the city. If there's no Naharis, if there's no Mayonis, if there's no sea next to it, there's no siman whatsoever to put to the city, then there's nothing. You don't write. The minhag is not to write Gittin in such a place because you can't put a siman for the city. If a city has a Kviyas Shemus from the past, we don't change it, not Maitzilaz on the Gittin that were written before, even if the pronunciation, one of the pronunciations is no longer in existence. Now, I mentioned rivers. There are certain rivers which flow through Europe, which in every country they're called something else. There's the river which in English is called the Danube River. Danube River in Get could be spelled as Duna, as Dunai with 1 yud, Dunai with 2 yuds, and I never saw a Get that spells it as Danube, but there is different spellings for that river based on which country it went through. It goes through Slovakia, it goes through Hungary, it goes through Ukraine, it goes through Serbia. a bunch of these places had גיטין being written throughout the years, and you'll see it goes through Austria. You'll see the same river in certain places being written, and through Germany. So גיטין, which were written in Germany versus Budapest, had different spellings. Even in Budapest itself, there was different spellings depending on the time until it was established one way and not the other how to do it. There's even stilis in the Chuvas of the Chasam Sofer, and there's in different books how to spell the names of the rivers. The only time when you change an existing name of a place is when the name is completely changed to totally eradicated, or if a river is no longer in existence. Moscow, the old גיטין, had 3 rivers mentioned on it, and the communists filled up one of the rivers and did construction, so the גיטין you'll see גיטין after a certain year from Moscow, I'm talking about before, many years ago, it switches from 3 rivers to 2 rivers because the 3rd river no longer existed. You can't write a lie in a get, even for the purpose of not to be Maitzilaz. Now, different, like I mentioned, there's different names of different cities and different rivers are spelled differently or mentioned differently. Something interesting, which I love Dafka, you knew about it. London sits on a river called Thames. Yeah, so that's the river.
What's it called?
Thames, that's how it's pronounced, even though it's spelled Thames. I'm not English, I can't pronounce it the proper way, but that's the way I pronounced it. But that river also has a name, Isis or something like that. So in the old גיטין of London, that's what's Nikva, it's the name of the river is written Tes Aleph Mem Yud Shin. Even though it's not pronounced that way. It's a combination of both names. London, Ontario sits on a river with the same name. Huh? Different river. Huh? Tes Aleph Mem Yud Shin. That's how it was Nikva hundreds of years ago. There's a city in Ontario called London, and it sits on a river called Thames. It also sits somewhere else, but that river has a second name, so you could spell it. And New London, Connecticut, also sits in a river called Thames, and another name, and also on the ocean. So you could do Al-Kefiyam over there. But all the cities which copied London also named the rivers that flow next to the city the same way as the London River. So if there would only be one city with, if it would be that all 3 cities would have the same name and all 3 rivers would be pronounced the same way, it would be spelled in the get the same way, you would have to find another siman for the cities to be able to properly write a get in those cities, because otherwise there would be a confusion. Which city is what? One of the 2 or 3 cities that are written. So you see, that's where Almeina Hadis are holding in the 3rd line of the get. In the old get, originally they would write Mokim Diraso, where they come from, and Mokim Amida, where the get is being written right now, where they're standing right now when the get is being written. Today we only write Mokim Amida. Yeah, so after you do the name, which is and before you do, so the first place that you write is the place where you write the get. That's a place where the get is written. That has to be in the get that is Toirif. Then comes the name, whatever the name of the person is. This is where the investigations start. You do it before the get to find out the names of the person has from birth, if the name was Nishtaka, if the name was not Nishtaka. If there's nicknames, if there's nicknames, if there's additional nicknames, if they have nicknames in the ksuba, what's the name of the father also. You do it for the man and for the woman. That's the whole siman kuf chavtes, which we're not going to be doing. I'm not focusing on it too much. I did discuss it partially in shiurim last year in Hilchas Ksubas, and that is a place where if you don't know what you're doing, you'll be completely paisel the get. Because if you write a name that the person is not being called in Bichlal, you can make the get pasul. If you write a nickname that is not being used, you can make the get pasul. If you write just a name that's for sure being used, the get is kosher, called Moisef Goireya. You add 100 nicknames and you don't know which one is right and which one is wrong, you get yourself into trouble. So in case of doubt, eliminate it. By the Sfardische Gitin, there's an addition afterwards. V'chol shum achran de'isli u'lavasi u'la'asri. That means they add, so it's a catch-all for the get. So it's a chol shum. If I have any other name that I have, or that my city has, or my father has, it's all covered within this get. By the Ashkenazim, we don't write v'chol shum, and therefore you do have to do all the research on the nicknames. Now, if you spell a nickname wrong, you also could make the get possible if it's read differently than the way it's supposed to be, spelled.
Read nicknames for the father also?
Yes. Husband and father, and that's the whole Siman Kuf Chavtes. We're not going to focus on it. Then, after the name of the husband comes the words usually ha'oimed hayoim, and since it's Mokem Amida, you would write, by the way, in the get I'm going to send you afterwards, the old get, it says the name of the city where it comes from, and ha'oimed in this, they were ha'oimed in Yerushalayim, but they both came from different cities in Eretz Yisrael. But today we only write Mokem Amida, so that's ha'oimed hayoim, and then the name Brooklyn, again, Brooklyn was the Yasva, and by the Sfardim, like I told you, write Chol Shum for him, his father in his place, and then Tzavisi B'Ravas Nashid La Nisna. This is part of the Taifas that Shvokis B'Toris Etruchis. Those three words repeat itself in the get in three different words that repeat three different lashonis of release, and these three lashonis are written in the get in three different orders. The Shvokis P'toris Truchis are written first Shvokis P'toris Truchis, then P'toris Shvokis Truchis, and then Sefer Truchin get Shvukin get P'turim. So it's each word gets one time to be first, and the other words change order. And then comes the name of the woman. By the name of the woman, again, you have to do the research for her name, for her nicknames, and her father's names and nicknames, and then again you'll see Ha'imedes Hayoim and the name of the city. Some Gittin that you have here, I didn't go through all of them, some Gittin that you have here only have Ha'imed on the husband, don't have Ha'imed on the wife. Some Gittin have on both. Some Gittin won't have on either of them. What's the difference between them? If a get is written and is given miyad liyad from the hand of the husband to the hand of the wife is there at the time of the get, or in. So then you write Ha'imed on him and you write Ha'imedes on her because she's here. If it's a get shlichus that the husband is not going to give it to her in her hand, then you don't write Ha'imedes. It becomes a whole shaila if you have a woman which is in the city, but she doesn't want to receive the get from her husband's hand. She wants it only on the day shliach. Some Bate Din will ask her, please go to a different city during the time of the get, so that way it should not be a shaila if we're not going to write Ha'imedes on you. But by a get shlichus, you'll never see Ha'imedes. Only Ha'imedes. If you have a get in front of you which says, from all the get, the one I have in front of me has Ha'imed and Ha'imedes. But if you have a get in front of you which does not have the words Ha'imedes after the wife, then you know it's a get shlichus. Now if a husband did a minui, b'chsav or minui, and was not there when the get was written, there would not be Ha'imed on him and there would not be Ha'imedes on her either. So the first 6 lines will be smaller, and the problem is in a place like Brooklyn that you're losing 2 lameds, 3 lameds, and 4 lameds. Brooklyn, al kefyama, al nahar sivra, al mei naharis, you're losing 4 lameds and 3 nuns and a kuf and a langachaf. So for me'ure, you have to have that in mind, because then it becomes a problem. If you don't have Ha'imedes on her or on him, you have to restructure your words. And if a woman's name is Chana and her father's name is Yosef and the husband's name is Chaim, Doiv, and a bunch of other Chaim, Doiv, Ber, whatever, and his father's name also has no lameds, suddenly you're going to end up with 2 full lines without any lameds, and maybe no nuns, so you have to be a sefer. You know what you're doing. You have to plan it in advance. That way, you have the nikud of me'ure, the point of me'ure. Now, anything which is going to be, since there's different things to toifas and toiref, some words that you're going to miss in a get are not going to make a get possible. If it's in the toifas, depends what, as long as it's read properly. Writing a word which means something else is worse than completely missing out the words. So if, for example, if you have, it says, after it says, Yisichi li, of Torah Shokis, Yisichi lichi, yeah? And intasi. So if we skipped intasi, if we skipped lichi, these words might not possible a get, because the get is still understood. It says depends which words you missed. There's one more difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardic get, that in the end where it says V'enesh yimache b'yidaychi min yoma denanu la'olam, so after b'yidaychi it says min shmi min yoma denanu la'olam. That's one of the other differences between a Ashkenazi get and a Sephardic get. And then the nusach of the get, the next 6 lines, there's no real differences between a Ashkenazi get and a Sephardic get. Now, גיטין which have a medus, you'll see sometimes the name of the city will be in the 7th line, but the name of the woman will always be in the 6th line. So you get everything into the 6 lines, you have to get at least the name of the woman. Why would you move Brooklyn to the line below it? Because you might need one of the lameds or something of the sort. So you might move around, shift the words. But even when you shift the words, you have to be careful not to move. The name of the woman should not go past the 6th line. Part of the halachas of writing a get will be, when you write the date, right? So it has to be written and signed on the same day. And if it's given from the husband to the wife, it has to be written and signed and given on the same day. If it's in Kuf Chav Zayin, we'll go a whole discussion. If it's going to be written and signed, if it's written by Yom V'nechtam B'layla, it's possible. If it's written by Yom V'nechtam B'yom, but it's going to be given at night, then it cannot be given anymore by the husband. Why? Because when the husband gives a get, there's no koil. Shliach gives a get, there is a koil. So the husband would have to appoint a shliach to be able to deliver the get to his wife. And that is means Kuf Chav Zayin. No, she's Himedis. When the get was written, she was Himedis. Nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. Now, so that is essentially what a get looks like. I'm just going to go through one more thing, and that is, since we're starting Kuf Chaf Aleph and Kuf Chaf, I meant. So, in Kuf Chaf, when it starts with it goes through the halachas. It has to be appointed by the husband. Appoints the sofer. The husband pays for the sefer, the get and everything that's being used for the get has to be owned by the husband. It has to be paper of the husband, the writing instruments of the husband, the ink of the husband, everything else. The chatchila has to be his. If it's on somebody else's, it could be a problem for a kosher to get. If he stole paper and he writes a get on it, it's still kosher. Why? Because it already became his. He's a gazlan. He was a balaveda. But it's not like hilchas sukkah where you're not yotze mitzvah in something which is gazel. Over here, the only thing that you have to make sure that it belongs to you. And if you have, and you have to just make sure the sefer has to know that the husband, being that the husband is the one appointing him, he has to know that the husband is the husband and that the wife is the wife. They bring ID or they bring Eidim that testify, and Eidim that testify that they are married to each other, and this is the husband and this is the wife. And I did have one case in the last 10 years when a guy came to Beis Din with his wife, or so he claimed, Israelis, and he was not her husband. She was waiting for a get, and he was her friend. And he was trying to fake it to be able to free her so she could get remarried. And therefore he was playing the whole game, but he didn't have proper documentation, siyata d'shmaya, that he was busted. And there was no get written. I think that other Bate Din did not fall for it either. Okay, with this I'm going to stop this part of the share.